So check this out. A lot of money goes into performative outrage. TMZ cucks know their paymasters are watching. It's got to be a good performance. So I don't know. I saw this clip of Dan Bilzerian. Did you know that Dan Bilzerian is running for Congress against that fat fuck Randy Fine? And he has my critical support. And I wanted to share this clip of him dismantling Israeli propaganda, anti-Semitic propaganda, Zionist propaganda, in real time. Apparently, he was interviewed by TMZ. Let's take a look.
You called your opponent this fat Jew. So,
what a way to begin a clip, right?
oh, he's not from Israel, but you called a guy in Florida this
Well, he might as well be.
fat Jew. How is that not anti-Semitic?
Well, he's a Jewish supremacist, and he puts Israel before America, and I think that, he should be tried for treason.
I mean, is he not fat? I would have said, look, is he fat? Would you consider him fat? Yes or no? Okay. Is he also Jewish? Would he consider himself a Jew? Yes or no? Okay, so the fact that he's both fat and a Jew leads us to conclude that he is also a fat Jew. I don't think that's just objectively what he is.
Fat Jew is anti-Semitic.
Yes.
Dan.
I mean, why is that not fat phobic? That's more That's more of the outrage right there. I mean, just being called a Jew is not derogatory. I mean, we've been over this. Jews consider being called Jews derogatory, apparently. And, it's another example of their preciousness. The fact that they're not just a religion. They're not like all you other goy religions. They're a special kind of religion. They're actually a breed of religion, if you can believe that. That's why they're called ethno-religions. It's like we're ethnicities when it counts, when we want it, when we need it to be, and we're also just religious people too when we need it to be. It's like pick one, right? You can't be both. There's no such thing as an indigenous religious ideology. Religious ideologies and national territories are not the same thing.
That's what you say, but how about every single time
that's what I know. I don't say it. I know
he literally talks about how Muslims are lower than dogs. So is that Islamophobic?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, he's a U.S. senator, or is he? I mean, he's a representative, right? He's a congressman. He's a sitting U.S. congressman. He has clearly way more political power than Dan Bilzerian. He can actually enact policies. And he's spewing Islamophobic screed. So clearly that is more of an issue than any sort of anti-Semitic rhetoric at this point.
That wouldn't be, that's not appropriate for him to say either. If he had said that.
But he does all the time. And he tweets that. And he's a senator.
Are you anti-Semitic?
No, I'm not anti-Semitic. I think that, that's kind of a made-up term. I think the Palestinians are the real Semites. Is it a made-up term? Yes, because
I like that Dan went after the phrase, that concept,
Look at if you look at what a Semite
was
is.
Was Hitler anti-Semitic?
What's that?
Was Hitler anti-Semitic?
Like I said, it's the term is focused solely on Jews, but actual Semites are the Arabs, and Palestinians are Semites as well. And they actually have more, DNA lineage to that region than any of the Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews that have taken it from them. So, I kind of have issue with that term and how it's been hijacked to only talk about Jews.
So if you want to call it anti-Jewish, then you can call it anti-Jewish.
Well, I'm not going to call this anti-Jewish. When you say that this fat Jew, you
it's the word. He didn't say fat Semite, he said fat Jew. So yeah, I guess that would be in your fucked up head, that would be anti-Jewish by calling him what he is, what he claims himself to be.
You could take another race and you could use another epithet, but you're anti-Semitic, Dan.
I'm not. I have Jewish friends.
Oh, some of your best friends are Jewish?
All Jews with one brush, but he paints all Muslims with one brush, and it's accepted. And for some reason in this country,
I wish he hadn't said, yeah, but I've got Jewish friends. It's like such a trope at this point.
It is okay to just blast Muslims, bash them. You look at what Bill Maher said about Muslims. I mean, it's this double standard.
But it's true. Dan is showing more nuance about Judaism than Randy Fine did about Islam in this interview.
And I don't like the double standard. And I look at him as a Jewish supremacist. He believes that, Jews are better than other people, and he puts Israel before America. And so if you got a black friend that you don't like, do you use the N-word on him? No, I
Well,
don't.
then what's the difference when you use?
Oh my God, this is such brain rot. You know, Jew is not a derogatory term, folks. It's just an identity of a Jewish person. That's what you call them. They're Jews. Why is that?
The word fat Jew for a Jew you don't like.
Well, is Jew the same as because that is not that's not, one is a slur, right? And one
I
is
didn't realize he dropped it.
describing a religion. So you can't compare the two.
Really?
You know,
There's a way
how can you compare those two?
There's a way you say it, Dan, that the intent is the same.
It's not the same at all.
So
one is a slur, one is a racial slur that I don't use, and the other one is describing an ethnicity.
You just used it.
Well,
you said N-word. You know, it's like the Louis C.K. things. Like, you put that word in my mind.
are we adults? Can we talk about a word? Is
Yeah,
the word
exactly.
so
Exactly.
offensive that that it just, you know, you can't say it? We have to say the
answer to that is yes.
So
Okay.
I want to ask a question.
People are too sensitive.
Yeah. People are too sensitive. Yeah, he might need better tact. I would agree. But that, I mean, he also could have just attacked it from a different angle. I think he could have come at him with a different talking point. But you know what? We gotta say kudos to Dan, because he's taken on the Zionist Epstein class, and so all power to him for that. And if he unseats Randy Fine, then he's got my critical support, of course. And you know, Dan's pretty base when he's not crowing about the Bolshevik Holocaust or crying about how communism is Jewish. But, you know, other than that, wait, that's an old clip. But, you know, I have to say, like,
your opponent.
You know, there's a lot of people on Twitter that I don't agree with all of their politics, and Dan is one of them. But right now, the principal contradiction that we should all be uniting against is the Epstein class. So anyone who's materially supporting the end of the Epstein class, politically, economically, materially, rhetorically, then they have our support. All right, I got a lot of things to show you. Let's go to my reposts here. So the Iranians are back out in Tehran in full force, refusing to accept a ceasefire without Lebanon. How awesome is that? A ceasefire without Lebanon is betrayal to Islam. Like, it's crazy, the contradictions here, because you see one settler colony, let's just call it, because I can't even call them a nation state, but one settler colony that's weaponizing religion to conduct all these atrocities. And here you have a country that actually uses religion morally, or actually, you know, roots themselves in moral tenets espoused in their religion, which affects what they materially do and how they, you know, posture and how they conduct their policies against other countries, even in times of war. Let's see what this says. CNBC: President Trump's threatened to destroy a civilization. This is crazy. The CNBC anchor asks, President Trump has threatened to destroy a civilization. How does an investor process that? Yes, let's please think more about the investor class. How are investors love that? What are you talking about? The investor class is the very class, the very entity that is promoting this genocidal war against Iran. And she says, is it a bigger upside risk or a downside risk? These people are insufferable, my God.
Risk or downside risk?
Yeah.
This deadline that President Trump has set, 8 p.m., has threatened to destroy a civilization. How does an investor process that? Is it a bigger upside risk or downside risk?
Yeah.
This deadline that President Trump.
Crazy. Oh, my goodness. I probably shouldn't have retweeted that. Whoops.
These niggas is letting these niggas do a bar.
Okay, I don't think I'm going to play that. Sometimes I don't know what happens in the posts that I repost because I'm just watching them for the first time on stream with you. So shame on me, I guess. So Netanyahu murdered these kids in Lebanon today. Did Western media say anything about them? The answer is no. Apparently they're burying the Epstein files on the moon. So that's good. Israel, please stop. Finally, you know, we were wondering about Laura Loomer because she was butthurt that Trump negotiated this, or I can't even say negotiated. Trump accepted the ceasefire proposal from Iran finally, and she was, remember, she was just complaining and crying that about like the MAGA haters. She was, even though she was upset that Trump made this decision. Well, now she's officially turned on Trump. And I don't know, I mean, judging by this tweet alone, I know I'm reading a lot into that, but look what she says. Breaking: Trump has sold out Israel to the terrorist mullahs in Tehran. The art of the deal was just the art of the betrayal. So the MAGA movement is collapsing. I think Trump is definitely seeking an off-ramp, as they say. This bitch says Candace is calling for a whole civilization to die. No, that would be the president of the United States that said that, you idiot. Candace just said there will never be peace in the world while Israel exists, which is true. And I said, oh my God, Denoive, this is like another holocrash. Look, and then she responds, diss you? What? Because I said the president needs to be removed from office ASAP? Yeah, that is me. What's your point, you silly skank? But people are seeing it for what it is. Syrian girl says, you're not a civilization. You're just ISIS. You're not a civilization. You're a science experiment that's gone shockingly wrong. You're not a civilization. You're a settler colony. Very true. Very true. Yep. Never trust Israel, says the Palestine News Network. I concur. Let's see. Short of a nuclear strike or 1 million soldiers properly organized, says Douglas McGregor, trained and equipped for a new kind of warfare, victory over Iran is virtually impossible. And he links us to a Substack article. Let's see. We can't read it because it's paywalled. Oh, well. Capitalism at its finest. This guy says, I'm confused why Trump doesn't dump Israel at this point. His base would be happy. So would the international community and the MSM. They're not buying him like the Gulf Arabs. The only MAGAs who liked Israel are the cultists who would go in any direction. What ties him to them? It's a good question. What ties him to them? I think it might be probably because he wants to continue not being murdered. Right? Yeah, remember the Israelis know 3 tactics: bribes, blackmail, and bloodshed. The 3 Bs. I mean, Miriam Adelson's going to want her 300 mil back. There's a meme about the oil prices. I keep trying to think of metaphors to explain what's happening, And I was thinking, like, because I was watching a lot of these, you see these CNN sound bites, and they interview these Jewish supremacists, and they're talking about how Iran is such a threat and all this, and I'm just thinking, like, man, we've really got our finger on the pulse, It's like we've got our magnifying glass over the ant pile, and we're witnessing the Zionist lobby just go haywire, working overtime, scrambling, and Israel, like we've said, is in its extinction burst. So Justin J.D. Vance says, if Iran wants deal to fall apart over Lebanon, it's their choice. If Iran wants to let negotiations fall apart over Lebanon, that's ultimately their choice, he says. But remember that the deal that the United States accepted included Lebanon. It said a cessation of all hostilities against all countries in the region. I don't know if y'all can hear that because the volume's a little low, but I think this guy's political career is over, just like Trump's. I mean, think about it. He is promoted as the lone conciliatory voice in the Trump admin that the Iranians are allegedly willing to talk with, and listen to what he says, and listen to what he does, or watch what he does. I don't really hold out much hope. Larry Johnson was interviewed, and he was saying that according to his sources in the U.S. military, they're prepared for this to go on till 2028. So the U.S. military is already planning for this to be years long of a war. And everything else, despite all this ceasefire talk, obviously we know that's a sham and it's already, broken. But even while it was still a thing, it's like we still saw a lot of deployments to the region. Everything materially was saying, no, this is still escalating. This is just a restructuring. In fact, Robert Pape, while I'm thinking about it, I want to show you this article by Robert Pape. I know Martin Crank is going to just crank me to death over this because I'm sharing this guy's article, and he thinks it's AI, but I don't give a shit what Martin Crank thinks, clearly, right? That's why I'm singling them out. So it says the pause that isn't, why the Iran ceasefire changes everything. I thought this would be, it's pretty short, so I'll just read it to you. The headlines say ceasefire. That is the most misleading word in the system right now. After 40 days of escalation, the United States and Iran have agreed to a 2-week pause, no strikes, no missile attacks, and coordinated passage through the Strait of Hormuz. It looks like de-escalation, but it is not. The capability to disrupt global energy flows is still intact. The incentives that drove escalation are still in place, and key actors Most importantly, Israel have not committed to restraint. Nothing fundamental has been resolved. Isn't that exactly what we were saying yesterday? What has changed is more important. The system has shifted from visible conflict to structural repositioning. So there's a new vocab word or concept for the stream today. It'll be on the pop quiz. So just forewarned, the phase where power actually moves, he says. This is the moment most analysis it gets wrong. What this briefing will do that headlines cannot, you already know what happened. This briefing is about what happens next. Before it becomes obvious, I will walk through 5 things that will determine the next phase of this conflict. So he's setting up this little Zoom seminar that he's giving on April 9th. And these are the 5 bullet points that he's going to cover. He says, number 1 is what the ceasefire actually changed and what it didn't. Why this is not stability and why treating it as such is the first analytic mistake. Number 2, the real winners and losers, structural, not political. Who gained power over the past 40 days? Well, we know who that is. That would be Iran, and why that power will persist even if the ceasefire holds. Why the escalation trap is still active. Number 3, the core mechanism, failure, fear, escalation. Remember that that's the 3 phases of the smart bomb trap, basically, also known as the escalation trap, has not been broken. I will show exactly where it is likely to reappear. And number 4, the 3 break points over the next 14 days where this ceasefire is most fragile and what specific events could collapse it. Number 5, what to watch for in real time. The indicators that will tell you before the headlines whether the system is stabilizing or sliding back towards conflict. Why this moment matters more than the war itself. When bombs fall, everyone pays attention. When they stop, people assume the danger is past. Not us, though, of course. We know the real deal. That is when the real shift occurs. Over the next 2 weeks, governments, markets, and militaries will quietly adjust to a new reality, a world in which the reliability of energy flows can no longer be assumed without the cooperation of Iran. Those adjustments, contracts, deployments, diplomatic signals are what reshape power. They happen before the next escalation. They happen out of view. And once they happen, they're hard to reverse. By the time the next high point in crisis is visible, the underlying shift will already be locked in. Are you locked in? We're all locked in tight and hard. And I think we're going to see some more shit hit the fan. Well, I mean, we know we are. We're seeing it right now. All right, let me just see if there's anything else. Some of you are wondering, like, what is taco? I don't get what the taco is. Let's just for all you people that are uninitiated.
Trump always chickens out. Trump always chickens out.
Okay, that will also be on our final exam. All right, we saw that clip. So getting back to this whole Dan Bilzerian clip, I had a few more words, like, because I think about it a lot, because I'm confronted with it. People think I'm obsessed with the Jays, but I think the Jays are obsessed with being Jays and doing a G in the land of the P. And we are simply NOTISECI whatever. We're noticing, okay? I'm trying to censor myself because I don't know what I can get away with saying these days anymore. They want to ban every fucking word that we come up with to highlight what we are all realizing is a very big problem, but I just don't understand. And then, we saw that clip of Judy Gold, and she's crying on stage about how some heckler called her a J, and that guy needed to be kicked out for calling Judy Gold what she perfectly well calls herself and is. And it just got me thinking, because these people call themselves Jews, and then they behave like demons, like Jewish supremacists, basically, right? They behave like demons. And we're the ones who must embody nuance and walk on eggshells unless we commit the mortal sin of, dare I say, victimizing them by associating their behavior with the label that they provided us. I don't fall for that. I'm not trying to hear all of that. You know what I'm saying? I felt this post from Sean King. He says, I hate Israel with all of my heart. I hate them. They're the most evil, vile, unethical, dishonest, violent, horrid, putrid, genocidal mass murderers on the planet. Shame on anyone who still supports them. I simply pray for justice. I could not imagine doing so much evil. I think we're right there with you, Sean. Every day, our follower counts on Twitter are just going down like, in direct proportion with the oil prices that are going up. But a lot of pro-Palestinian accounts have been claiming that they've been losing followers, myself included. I've lost about 1,000 followers in the past 48 to 72 hours, which is pretty crazy. Seems like that's a bit manufactured, right? Every day my account shrinks, says Adam, that despite analytics showing growth, this bot purge is just an excuse to take down accounts with a low Palantir social credit score. Now, how does someone with this face think he's chosen? Chosen by who exactly? Demons? Apparently, Israel bombed a funeral in Lebanon at a cemetery, and everyone at the funeral is now dead. Nick Cruz says Israelis are trying to distance themselves from Netanyahu right now. Have you seen this? A lot of Zionists are like, Netanyahu failed us. And he says Israelis trying to distance themselves from Netanyahu right now as if they weren't on board with everything he was doing. I said, that's a good point. Victory has 1,000 fathers, but defeat is a lonely orphan, isn't she? Will someone please tell the Chinese that communism is Jewish? Because if only they knew that's why their country is a mess. Somebody replied to that and said, it's interesting how communism is Jewish, end quote, yet it's always the communist countries that don't recognize Israel and don't have a Rothschild bank. It's called satire, beefaroni. Come on. People actually took me as like being literal from that post. They're like, oh, wow. Yeah, China's such a mess, huh? Maybe look at your own backyard, American. I was like, yeah, exactly. Apparently, this is what Trump meant by dropping bombs tonight. That's just allegedly, though. I still can't get over this. I know we watched it, but... Yummy. All right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yep, they kept their banks, didn't they? They sure did. Thank you, Tia. All right. You know, I like to listen to the old timers. I always like to think about the old timers. Can't help but think what they might do in this time. So speaking of old timers, here is Alistair Crook with his 10-point Iranian framework and the empowering of Iran. What was agreed by Iran on the 7th of April is not a ceasefire per se, but rather a brief cessation in military actions in order to provide the space in which to test whether meaningful political discussions with the U.S. is possible or not. The U.S., however, has accepted Iran's National Security Council's 10-point framework as the agreed anchor to possible discussions, due to begin in Islamabad on Friday. But as we know, those talks have now been canceled. Because this obviously was written yesterday, or no, this was earlier today. But yeah, those talks are all. He says the 10 points in effect represent Iran's preconditions to any move to a more substantive ceasefire. The framework emanates not from fringe Iranian political figures talking with outside mediators, but from out of the core leadership in Iran. After considerable discussion within the Security Committee of Iran's National Security Council, the framework was finalized and proposed to the Supreme Leader. The latter discussed the text, amended some aspects, and gave it his imprimatur. The framework is therefore a serious and grounded statement of Iran's position. Clearly, the present situation nonetheless remains very tentative. Okay, I thought I was going to read more of that, but since shit is so fast moving that it quickly becomes irrelevant. Let's go ahead and take a look at Al Jazeera Live and see what they're doing, what they're talking about. And
what do we know about how the president is making decisions like agreeing to the ceasefire and where things go from here?
Well, we can look at the start of Epic Fury, the name of the operation that began more than 30 days ago, as a signal to who the president is looking to and just how small his team of advisors is. There's no question that as commander-in-chief, the U.S. president is the one making the ultimate decisions, and that this is a very centralized and top-down structure. What we know is that it's personality-driven all around the U.S. president. So when it comes to negotiations, they're really no different. It really is very much the same. But what we saw at the start of the conflict was the U.S. president at his home in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, not here at the White House, where his director of national intelligence, as well as the vice president, were simply taking an observer status. And what that really signals is that the U.S. president is not looking for dissenting voices, particularly when it comes to the vice president and Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. Instead, what he is listening to is instinct over intelligence. And as a result, what you get is really a top-down structure when the president makes decisions, whether it is during the military conflict or in negotiations to end it.
Manny, I'll bring you in here. Kimberly, talking about those different voices. You're at the State Department. That is home, of course, to Marco Rubio, a close member of Trump's cabinet. How much sway does he have with the president?
Well, like you said, Anna, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is quite close to President Trump. He has his ear. He has the president's trust, which means that he also has a lot of influence when it comes to policy and when it comes to strategy here. Ultimately, however, we also
look
know...
at this. Look at the subtext here. President Donald Trump has long maintained that he is his own best advisor, and he's better than his generals. My God, he's a military genius, folks.
Just to build on what Kimberly was saying in that previous question that you asked her, it is up to President Trump at the end of the day to make these decisions over strategy. We know that because of individuals who are close to him within the administration, who are more familiar with this process, who have said exactly that. And by many accounts, President Trump is leaning less on traditional diplomatic channels like the State Department and more on his own instincts. You heard it from the president himself, who says that at times he knows when he feels it in his bones. And part of this is President Trump's character. He's long expressed distrust over in U.S.
Trump has character?
Intelligence agencies. He's expressed...
Trump is a character, doesn't mean he has character.
Skepticism over career journalists here. So, you know, this is important because along with this sense of urgency that we're getting from U.S. diplomats here at the State Department, and when you hear it within the foreign policy chatter here in the city, this is important because this is a strategy when it comes to Iran and when it comes to negotiations that is not consensus driven, but rather, like Kimberly said, a top-down approach. So you have to imagine that there undoubtedly has to be some frustration among diplomats when they look at this.
All right, whatever. Shut up, Lib. Let's take a look at the Discord and see what you guys have been posting. This is
Lebanon is a country of remarkable diversity, shaped by layers of civilization and a rich cultural and historical legacy. Its people have long shown resilience in the face of adversity, preserving a vibrant social fabric rooted in coexistence among communities and traditions. Lebanon needs a period of calm to pursue its objectives of peace and stability. The renewed escalation and hostilities are a matter of great concern. They threaten far more than infrastructure. They endanger civilian life and
very, very bad. Okay, I'm sorry.
Risk reversing the fragile political and security progress Lebanon had begun to make preceding the current crisis.
I love the Pakistani accent.
In this context, allow me to make 4 points.
It's so much better than like the British or Australian or definitely the Irish and the Scottish. And certainly, of course, the forked tongue of the demon hiss that is the Israeli accent.
First, Pakistan reiterates its full support for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of Lebanon.
Thank you. Come again.
We condemn in the strongest terms Israel's continued military aggression in southern...
That's true. It is kind of Indian too. Yeah.
Lebanon, which has resulted in the death of more than 400 civilians, including at least 83 children and 42 women, and over 600,000 people displaced. Sweeping illegal evacuation orders across large parts of southern Lebanon have deepened civilian suffering. The large-scale destruction of civilian...
Like every time you listen to diplomats from countries that are the victims of imperialism, they always speak so cogently. They speak so morally. There's no conceit in their delivery. There's no contempt. There's no condescension. But listen to the Americans. Listen to the entitlement of the Israelis at these UN Council meetings.
Infrastructure and the blatant disregard for international humanitarian law must cease immediately. Second, the use of force must remain the exclusive prerogative of the Lebanese state through its legitimate institutions. In this regard, the Lebanese armed forces play a central role, and Pakistan supports efforts to strengthen their capacity and operation.
I feel like the Lebanese armed forces are in the pocket of the Mossad. That's why Lebanon has actual true resistance in Hezbollah.
Pakistan welcomes the efforts of the government of Lebanon to restore stability and strengthen state authority, including the cabinet decision of 2nd March to reinforce national security structures. We also note Lebanon's de-escalation initiatives, including the 4-point plan advanced by its leadership to restore calm. And third, Pakistan strongly condemns attacks on UN peacekeepers serving with UNIFIL. who have been injured in
Even here, they're like he's doing a good job of skirting talking about who is actually doing these things. He doesn't mention Israel or the United States by name.
Israeli strikes.
Oh, never mind. There he goes. I was like, wait, yeah, who's doing these attacks on UN peacekeepers exactly? It's not just anyone, right?
Peacekeepers operating under the UN flag carry out a vital mandate authorized by the Council. Their safety and security must be guaranteed at all times. Fourth, Israeli military activity.
Of course, he's on his phone. They're always on their phone. Look, he's just inconvenienced. Check my Grindr app. Did I get a new notification? Is there a new match for the gangbang tonight?
It is in southern Lebanon, including the continued presence of forces and the establishment of positions inside Lebanese territory, are illegal and unacceptable. These Israeli actions, which are in contravention of international law, are also undermining the efforts of the government of Lebanon to ensure peace and stability in the country.
I'm surprised it's not Danny Danon, the guy with the leaf.
We call for Israel.
He would also be on his phone, too.
Immediate.
Thank you, Mali, for the love. I appreciate that.
Full and unconditional withdrawal from all occupied Lebanese territory. Sustainable calm requires the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701.
Someone take his phone and put it in the teacher's drawer. Now, Israel, are you going to pay attention? Are we going to have to put you in the corner again?
An unwavering respect for Lebanon's sovereignty and
Face the wall, Israel.
territorial integrity.
No, don't kiss the wall, Israel. Stop making out with the wall, Israel. Israel, it's not a glory hole.
Along the blue line. Mr. President, we echo the Secretary General's deep concern regarding the regional military escalation since 28th February, which has gravely undermined the November 2024 cessation of hostilities agreement. The situation in Lebanon cannot be viewed in isolation from this broader escalation across the Middle East. Heightened confrontation and unjustified attacks on several brotherly countries, which Pakistan has condemned, have gravely aggravated regional security and stability. At this critical juncture, dialogue and diplomacy must prevail over conflict.
Totally, yes. I love listening to UN Council meetings where they talk about how diplomacy and dialogue should prevail. Oh, it's just music to my ears at this point.
Confrontation, de-escalation, restraint, and renewed diplomatic engagement are urgently required to prevent further deterioration of the regional security environment. Only through sustained political dialogue and respect for international law can the region move towards stability. And to conclude, Mr. President, Pakistan stands firmly with the government and people of Lebanon. The international community must...
Wait, the president of the UN Council is the United States? What's this guy's name again? I forgot. Butthole Sampson, or what's his name?
With the government and people of Lebanon. The international community must take urgent action to prevent further escalation, alleviate human suffering, and support Lebanon's efforts to restore peace and stability across its territory. I thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Beautiful. All right, please clap. All right, let's see more slop.
Say the deal sounds very much like surrender on our part, which I'm in favor of. I mean, great. This needed to end. Ugly or any
Wow, Megan, you anti-American. You wanted us to surrender?
other way. It needed to end. It was folly to begin with. It was folly throughout. It remains folly.
You know, folly would be putting it nicely, actually. That's a nice euphemism.
I'm sure Mark Levin and Lindsey Graham were feeling really, really good until the end part where we had to end it. And now they're very, very angry. Mark Levin was practically in tears on Fox News last night because we didn't see it through, I guess, with
Micro Mark. He was crying about his micro penis, really. You know, it's really, that's what it really boils down to. It's the fact that he's got a shriveled penis. And he's upset about that. And so he tries to take it out on the goys.
nuclear bomb that we were going to drop on Iran. We didn't go in commando style and seize all the uranium. We allowed, according to the Israelis, according to the Iranians, that is, the war against Hezbollah to stop, which he wants seen through. He would love to see Lebanon completely bombed and to be made to look like Gaza. And there was really no point to going forward other than more death and destruction. The Iranians proved to be tough MFers.
Whoa,
See, the deals.
language, MK. My ears.
And Israel is stronger than ever. This is the bottom line of this campaign up until now. Let me say, there's
I guess this is the latest from Netanyahu. He's rejected the ceasefire and vows to continue fighting.
still additional objectives for us to achieve, and we will achieve them either by agreement or by resumption of the fighting. We are ready to resume the fighting at any moment. Our finger.
Every time I see this motherfucker, it's like, I've got to outlast him. We've got to outlast this fuck. He's still going. He's still mega evil. Like we got to stay on this.
Is on the trigger.
He's so tough to look at.
As you know, 2-week ceasefire has been announced between the U.S. and Iran. No, we were not surprised in the last moment, and I want to emphasize,
we are getting shellacked. Tel Aviv is on fire. The missiles are burning our cities down, and we needed to get a little time out.
Not the end of the war. This is a step in order to achieve all the objectives.
It's just a step in the right direction. I was listening to Scott Ritter earlier today, and he was like, yeah, they're trying to get in their last few punches because they know that eventually they're going to have to abide by the ceasefire. I don't know, take that for whatever you think it is. But he's saying that that's why they're trying to get in these last little sucker punches before they have to stop, because they can't materially continue at this rate, but they need time, to regroup. But we do know that an Al Jazeera journalist was killed in an Israeli drone strike while he was in his car. Apparently 4 people died when the vehicle he was traveling in was hit, highlighting the dangers faced by civilians and media workers. Another day, another war crime, or several.
So Netanyahu is saying that Christians are persecuted in Lebanon. Let's verify this statement firsthand by calling my friends and family there.
Broski, ça va quoi? Ça va et toi, bro? Mec, est-ce que tu te sens persécuté as a Christian in Lebanon?
Non, je pense que c'est chill, bro. You can practice whatever the fuck you want.
Ah bon, t'as déjà fait chier?
Que je suis chrétien?
Ouais.
Non.
I like how the subtitle bleeped out the F word, but not the actual F word.
Never. Why?
Netanyahu, il dit que les chrétiens ils sont persécutés au Liban.
Il dit, mec, c'est littéralement le plus grand manipulateur au monde, bro. You cannot just trust anything he says. Bro, this guy Netanyahu, bro. I hope he finds Jesus, bro.
Habibi. Ça va quoi?
Ça va et toi?
Est-ce que tu t'es déjà senti persécuté en tant que chrétien? Ça te fait marrer?
Au Liban?
Ouais.
Donc, bro, moi, je vis dans une région chrétienne. Qui va me persécuter? Tout le monde est chrétien.
C'est Netanyahu qui dit ça.
Ce qu'il dit. Le président est chrétien. Comment tu veux qu'on se fasse persécuter, bro? Vraiment, en Syrie, c'est une minorité.
I mean, it's not too surprising. I can't play George Carlin clips because they're copyrighted, folks. I'm so sorry. Let's do this.
The audacity of Israeli Zionist journalism. Imagine she's the only
says Iran just halted traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Imagine thinking you can trust a Muslim to keep their word.
journalist that are reporting on what's happening. She's the type that she would blame her own father for marrying her own mother. Right, she doesn't know her parents. But let me educate you. They closed the Strait of Hormuz because Israel is bombing Lebanon as we speak. Over than 254 civilians bombed, massacred as we speak. Can you imagine? Israel is threatening Christian families in Lebanon if they take any displaced Muslims from Lebanon, and if they take them in, they will still bomb their house. Can you imagine? They're gonna knock on each door and check if there's any displaced Muslims from Lebanon in Christian families. What does that remind you of? 1940s, exactly. What a child mother flower. You shit from down there and thick from up here. You were airport 7-inch forehead. Imagine trusting a Zionist Jew on social media. Imagine what would happen to the world if everybody believed them. If every lie you said, I get $1, I will be super rich right now to a point I can buy your whole family and send them back to Poland.
Poland, baby. Hello. Thank you, Lake, for the super chat. Desecrating Easter is not the mistake of an individual. It is, however, Zionist policy. Yes. Imagine that.
Hey, USA, what's new with you? So there's a crazy update about the ceasefire plan. Because you know how Iran gave us a 10-point plan for the ceasefire? Yeah, what about it? Apparently Trump threw it in the garbage. What? What? Yeah, Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, said that the 10-point peace plan was unserious, unacceptable, and was discarded. Because she said that Trump literally threw it in the garbage.
So let me be clear and correct the record. The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false.
Seriously, didn't you say you want peace? Well, you said you're going to open the Strait of Hormuz, but
We know what the Catwoman was going to say. Come on. She's a limited hangout, folks. She does the bare minimum. Okay, she doesn't need a pat on the back.
hey, Lebanon, what's going on with you? So something horrible is happening here because hundreds of civilians were killed or injured because of Israel, because they attacked densely populated areas in Beirut. That is horrible, but wasn't there a ceasefire? Well, Israel was like, oh, the ceasefire does not include Lebanon. Then they strike central Beirut that had busy neighborhoods with the excuse of fighting Hezbollah, and because of their attacks, hundreds of civilians were killed or injured or even stuck under the rubble. And our prime minister accused Israel of killing unarmed civilians. This is disgusting. I thought the ceasefire would stop this. Well, about the ceasefire, Trump actually confirmed that the ceasefire does not include Lebanon. Seriously, US? Yeah. Well, we said that if Israel continues to attack Lebanon, we will withdraw from the ceasefire. What? That will make Trump upset.
The Americans were like, yeah, Israel, we're going to agree to the ceasefire. And Israel's like, but wait, can't we still just bomb Lebanon just for funsies, please?